In the heart of every medieval village, one building never slept for long: the mill. Here, water, stone, and skill turned humble grain into the bread that kept entire communities alive. But behind the steady creak of the wheel was a world of danger, rivalry, and quiet mastery where a broken gear could mean hunger, and a miller's reputation was worth more than gold. Tonight, step inside the dusty mill house, feel the rumble of the stones, and see how these often mistrusted craftsmen kept medieval life turning. If you love uncovering the hidden trades that build history, hit like, tap, subscribe, and let boring history for sleep bring you more untold stories from the past. Before the first cock crows, the miller is awake. The village is silent, except for the soft gurgle of the stream, but down by the water, a sturdy stone building stands out from the cluster of timber homes and thatched roofs. This is the miller place, both vital and faintly mysterious, where the quiet magic of transformation happens, turning rough, dusty sheaves of grain into the flour that feeds the whole community. To be a medieval miller is to walk a line between routine and responsibility. The mill itself is a complicated beast, part structure, part machine, part animal, as prone to sulks and mishaps as any living creature. The wheel outside groans as water from the mill stream is released, turning creaking timbers and cogs that drive the great circular stones inside. The rush and thump of moving machinery fills the air, a constant accompaniment to the miller's day. The day's work begins before dawn, when the first carts or sacks of grain arrive, delivered by sleepy villagers or farmhands. Each sack is weighed and marked. The miller notes names and quantities in a battered ledger, often with more care than the villagers expect. Reputation is everything. Too many mistakes, and the customers will find another mill. Too much dishonesty, and the manorial lord may intervene. But every miller takes his toll, a small percentage of every sack, the traditional and legal payment for his labor and the upkeep of the mill. Arguments about the size of the toll are as old as milling itself. Once the business is settled, the real labor begins. The grain is poured slowly into the hopper, and the rhythmic grinding begins. 2 enormous millstones, one fixed, one turning, crush and shear each kernel into flour, meal, or bran. The process must be watched closely. If the stones are set too close, they heat and scorch the grain. Too far apart, and the meal is coarse and unsatisfying. The miller listens for subtle changes in the pitch of the stones and checks the texture of the flour with experienced fingers. Water power is the lifeblood of most medieval mills. The stream must be carefully managed, with gates and sluices adjusted to keep a steady flow over the wheel. Too much water, and the wheel races. Too little, and the stones slow, straining against the weight of grain. During dry summers, the miller may be forced to ration grinding hours, angering villagers whose bread depends on his work. In winter, when streams freeze or flood, the entire community can be left short of flour. The miller's domain is filled with dust, fine, chalky, ever-present. It settles on every surface, in hair and clothing, even in the lungs. Combating the build-up is a daily task, sweeping floors, oiling gears, checking for rats or insects. Each night, the stones are chalked and the wheel secured, lest a passing animal or a mischievous child start the whole apparatus in the miller's absence. Despite the importance of his trade, the miller's place in the community is complicated. He is respected for his skill, but sometimes resented for his power. Rumors about dishonest millers circulate in taverns and at market stalls, and folktales warn children to watch their measure and mind their toll. Yet without the miller, there is no bread, and so the village, the lord, and the church all have a stake in keeping the wheels turning. But what happens when disaster strikes a broken wheel, a burst dam, or the arrival of a new mill upstream? How does a miller maintain his trade, his tools, and his delicate standing with both lord and villager? And in an age of constant toil and thin margins, what becomes of the knowledge and quiet expertise that keeps the stones spinning, year after year? The miller's day is marked by noise and vigilance. Once the first load of grain is ground, the flow rarely stops. Villagers queue with their sacks, each in turn listening to the thump and whir of the great wheel. The hum of the mill becomes a familiar music, underscoring the miller's subtle dance of adjustments, tilting sluices, tapping stones, testing flour between thumb and finger. Yet even a well-run mill is beset by hazards. Machinery of wood and stone wears down quickly, and a single splintered gear or slipped cog can bring the entire operation to a halt. The waterwheel may jam with debris swept downstream, while rats gnaw at the wooden chutes and sacks. A stray spark or carelessly tended lamp can set flour dust alight, one of the most feared dangers in a mill, for a dust explosion can reduce the building to cinders in moments. When disaster does strike, the miller is responsible for swift repairs. Every hour the mill stands idle means lost income and, more importantly, hungry neighbors. A broken axle or cracked millstone requires ingenuity as well as muscle. Repairs may call for carpenters, masons, or even a blacksmith, costly help, unless the miller has learned these trades himself. Many millers pride themselves on their ability to jury-rig a fix, cobbling together makeshift gears or reshaping stones with chisels passed down from fathers and grandfathers. Nature, too, is a constant adversary. Summer droughts parch the mill stream, forcing the miller to negotiate schedules, sometimes grinding only for the wealthiest or most urgent clients. Winters freeze the wheel or send torrents that threaten to sweep away the dam. In flood season, the entire village may band together, filling sandbags and stacking stones to preserve the precious wheel and keep the bread supply safe. All this practical expertise, juggling water, stone, wood, and weather, must be matched by careful management of people and reputation. The toll taken by the miller, though legal and necessary, is a source of friction. Too generous, and he cannot keep the mill in repair. Too grasping, and rumors spread quickly. Medieval literature is full of wry tales about millers who take more than their share, their fingers longer than honest measure. Some lords impose strict regulations requiring regular inspection of the mill's weights and measures, or appointing a reeve to oversee fairness. The miller's position between lord, villager, and church makes diplomacy an essential skill. The lord expects a portion of the mill's output as rent. The villagers expect fair dealing and quick service. The church may require a donation of flour for festivals or charity. A clever miller cultivates good relationships, smoothing disputes with extra flour, or offering small repairs to a neighbor's plow in the off-season. But the social standing of the miller is always precarious, trusted, yet watched, prosperous, yet envied. He occupies a strange space, more skilled and independent than the average peasant, yet not truly free, for his mill is often owned by the lord, the church, or a wealthy merchant. The threat of a rival mill, built upstream or across the valley, is constant. Such competition can spark legal battles, sabotage, or sudden change in fortune. Amid these risks and rivalries, how does a miller safeguard the future of his craft? Who inherits the secrets of stone dressing, wheel repair, and negotiation with nature? And when the tools are handed down, what changes and what endures in the silent art of keeping the wheels turning? As the seasons and years turn, the life of the medieval miller is shaped as much by what is passed down as by what is built new. The mill itself often outlasts its keeper, its foundation stones bearing the wear of generations, its wheel replaced and repaired again and again, its heart the great millstones, grooved and smoothed by centuries of grinding. A miller's knowledge is both practical and hard-won. As children, future millers play on the muddy banks, watching the slow turning of the wheel, the constant pour of grain and flour, the careful checks of texture and taste. Fathers or uncles teach the subtleties of dressing the stones and grooving them to keep the grind even and efficient. These lessons are more than craft. They are insurance against hunger, against gossip, against ruin. The right grooves on a millstone can mean the difference between fine flour for bread or coarse meal that villagers refuse to buy. Inheritance, too, is a delicate matter. Mills are valuable, and disputes over who will inherit them can lead to legal squabbles or even violence. Sometimes the lord or the church claims a say, especially if the mill is domain owned as part of the estate. Sons, daughters, or nephews may be trained to the work, but an untimely death, a failed harvest, or a falling out can see the mill pass to a stranger, or even fall into neglect. Tradition sits side by side with gradual change. Over generations, water wheels improve, undershot wheels give way to more efficient overshot designs, and better sluices and dams control the flow. Sometimes windmills appear, especially in drier or hillier regions, bringing their own set of challenges. The daily rhythm, however, remains. The gathering of grain, the slow turning of the wheel, the careful tending of machinery and reputation. Socially, the miller's family holds a curious position. They may be better fed and slightly better dressed than the average villager, their house larger or built of stone. Yet they are set apart too by their hours, by the secrets of their craft, by the low rumble of suspicion that attends all those who handle the community's food. Over time, some millers become village leaders or minor gentry, while others fall from grace, ruined by drought, debt, or the anger of their neighbors. In the broader world, mills shape society itself. The presence of a working mill can bring prosperity to a village, attract bakers and brewers, and support markets and fairs. Without a mill, a village withers, its people forced to grind by hand a slow, exhausting chore, travel miles to another community. The sound of the wheel is, for many, the sound of security. As long as the mill turns, there will be bread. But the quiet legacy of the miller is found not just in flour or reputation, but in the slow accumulation of care and knowledge. The mill's constant tending, the improvisation in the face of breakdown, the ability to coax function from old machinery and peace from fractious neighbors. As the wheel turns, day after day, it marks not just the passage of grain, but the steady endurance of the human spirit. As you drift into sleep, imagine the last light fading through the mill window, the wheel creaking as it is chalked for the night, the fine white dust settling gently on beam and stone. The world outside grows quiet, but within the mill, the legacy of 1,000 careful hands persists, patient, essential, and quietly heroic.